Hey, Mr. Allred here, and we're still factoring quadratics, so I've got some more examples here. This one is x squared minus 4x minus 21. And I just want to go through my 5 steps. Some of them are a little overkill for certain problems, but I want you to get into the habit of at least looking at all 5 steps for all problems. So let's see here. My first step was to pull anything out that I could. It's fairly obvious that looking at this you cannot pull anything out. 21 and 4 have nothing in common. So in that case you can imagine there's a 1 out front. So my A would be 1, my B would be negative 4, and my C would be negative 21. Okay. So with that in mind, I'm going to look for two numbers that multiply together to give me A times C, which will be negative 21, and add up to be B, which is negative 4. So this is probably on the easier end of things, and if you have a method that you've been using for factoring quadratics, it probably works for this. But make sure if you want to stick with your method that you try it on the other problems we have and that everything is accounted for. But let's see here. I need two numbers that when they multiply together give me a negative. So there's a positive and a negative, and they need to be 4 apart. So 21. So that's 7 and 3, but not just 7 and 3. So let's see. 7 and 3. So the bigger number needs to be negative to get a negative 4. So numbers are 3 and negative 7. All right. So in step 3, I will have ax plus 3, so that'd be 1x plus 3, and ax plus negative 7, so that'd be x minus 7. There's not really any need to continue here. Step 4, there's nothing that pulls out, so I have the same thing. And in my step 5, I didn't pull anything out in the beginning, so there's nothing to put back, so x plus 3 times x minus 7 is how this factors. I don't expect you to write that over and over, but I do want you to get into a habit of thinking, is there any more I need to do? Because it's easy to stop at step 3. Sometimes you forget to put in an a value, or sometimes you forget to carry something from the beginning. So get in the habit of doing that. Okay. Next example. We've got negative x squared plus 8x minus 15. And if you remember, I mentioned that in step 1, if this thing starts with a negative, I would pull that out. So that can come out as a negative 1, and that's something you're going to want to have and put back in the end. But when you pull it out, what it does is it makes things a little bit easier to work with. So that'll be x squared minus 8x plus 15 if I change the signs. And I did pull everything out there. So in that case, the thing that I'm going to break down has an a of 1, a b of negative 8, and a c of positive 15. If you don't pull a negative out, you'll kind of lose it later on. Okay, so in step 2, I need two things that multiply together to give me a times c, which in this case is 15, and add together to be b, which is negative 8. So they give me a positive number when I multiply them, so they're the same sign, so they're either both positive or both negative, but they add up to be a negative number in the second line, so they must both be negative. Two things that come to mind are 3 and 5, so negative 3, negative 5, and like I said, it's always good to double check yourself in the process and make sure you do get the right signs and the right difference. So let's see here. Put these back together. So ax plus the first number, so that'd be x minus 3, and ax plus the second number, so that'll be x minus 5. Nothing's coming out of either one of these because a was 1 when I did that. Like I said, if you don't pull that negative out in the beginning, it's really tricky there. But in the end, to break this thing down completely, we'll have a negative out front from the first step. So it'll be negative and then times the quantity of x minus 3 and then times the quantity of x minus 5. So just make sure you understand that. Negative 1 from the first step carried over to the end. Okay? And you can multiply that back together and see that you get the original. One more example here. So this one is 12x squared minus 44x minus 12. Those are not the biggest numbers in the world, but if you're used to guessing and checking, you try and use those numbers. They all have more than one set of factors, so it can become kind of messy. That and there's some negatives floating around in there, so you got to get the signs right. But one thing you might notice from the beginning is if we look at these three numbers, 12, 44, 16, I believe they're all divisible by 4. So if we pull a common term of 4 out in the beginning, we're left with 3x squared minus 11x minus 4. So our numbers got considerably smaller. So our A value is 3, our B value is negative 11, and our C value is negative 4. So then we're going to look for our two numbers. So it'll be two numbers that multiply together to give me A times C, which will be negative 12, and add up to be B, which is negative 11. So multiply to give you a negative, so they're different signs. They add up to give you a negative, so the bigger number is negative. Don't rule anything out here. I think the pair that we want here is actually negative 12 and positive 1. You can double check that. It looks right to me. So we're going to move forward. So in step 3, we're going to say AX minus 12, so that's 3x minus 12. And AX plus 1, so that's 3x plus 1. So in this particular one in step 4, I can pull a 3 out of the first one and have x minus 4. I can't pull anything out of the second one. Just be careful because sometimes you can pull some stuff out of both. But we put an extra 3 in step 3, so we should factor out and throw away a 3 in step 4. And then coming on down, step 5, we'll bring the 4 from the beginning down. We pulled him out in the beginning, so we don't want to lose him. It'll be 4 times x minus 4 times 3x plus 1. Okay, and just kind of run through these 5 steps. There'll be more examples you can work, and definitely some in the book and on practice. But the more you do, the better and more familiar you'll be. Thank you.